just to make a note of something. And it's going to sound incredibly schizo, and for the uninitiated, probably pretty hilarious. But basically, the idea is it has to do with shields. Talked about them before. Metaphysical shields that you put up depending on what you're trying to do. Hey, my man, what's up? Good to see you, bud. How's things? Good? All right. So, yeah, they're shields created by thought forms. And I've talked about the different kinds you can have. It's all, your imagination is your limit. So I come out of my house and I just mutter to myself, shields up all frequencies, like I'm in Star Trek or something. And it reminded me of one thing. Thought forms, all throughout Magick, this is the case, or Magick, whatever you want to call it, types of magic, schools of magic. If you say something out loud, it gives weight to the thought form. And I think pretty much most cases, I can't see how it would hurt. Just in the same way that when you're trying to, and I'm just using the word for convenience sake, when you're trying to conjure some kind of thought form in your mind, like some kind of thing that will have action on the 3D here, whether it's trying to put positive shields around yourself to keep out negativity or whatever, a lot of times hand or body movements can also bolster the strength or the effectiveness of whatever it is you're trying to do. So saying things out loud and using your body motions does help. In my in my opinion, it helps to add to the cement that will harden that concept of whatever it is you're trying to do out in the ether, when it has an effect here on the 3D, on the screen, in the quote-unquote real world. Do I have to do air quotes when I say quote-unquote? What the fucking cares? It'll have more of an effect, So yeah, it's funny, it seems silly, it's incredibly schizo, but saying it out loud, even to yourself, just muttering it to yourself, the words are so important to this whole thing too. That's why we have the words we do, that's why we're compelled to say them the way we do. And it's all, like I say all the time, it's parts of a spell, like the cartoon witch. She needs an ear of newt, she needs a bat wing, and then she has to say alakazam or whatever. And a lot of times she's moving around too, moving her hands and stuff like that. These are all components to making the spell, or in this case, the intention, the act of intention, the act of will. It makes it more solid. So, it can't hurt, to speak these things. And a lot of times, just by speaking them, you're bringing them into reality. And that's why sometimes they try to trick you into saying things, or they'll call things by a certain name. Like I always go on about how racism isn't a real word, because it isn't. So they try to get you to say things, because the more you say them, the more you speak them into the ether, the more you're hardening that cement, and the more strength you're giving them, sometimes unknowingly, or most of the time unknowingly. This is done on a subliminal level to a lot of people, oh, this is that, and then you associate it in your mind, and then you start calling it that, and then by calling it that and associating that concept or thing in your mind with those words, you're making it a reality. You're basically doing what they want you to do. This cow is a chicken. It's all right, and you're thinking in your mind, well, that doesn't seem right, but are they saying this cow is a chicken? You just said cow is a chicken. And you think, well, it's out of context. Context is like sort of a floating element in all this. Context doesn't necessarily matter in a lot of this stuff. Like I talked about how if you see a murder on TV and your brain files that memory, it's not saving the television around it or the room around it or whatever. It's saving the memory of the murder. And I just read this thing the other day that, what was it? Some kind of study. Someone mentioned it in the comment section and I went and looked at it. What it does is when you see someone murdered, even on a TV screen, your cortisol levels go up to abnormal levels, and they don't return for 3 days. Now, cortisol is the thing your body pumps out as sort of like a de-stressor. It comes out when you're in a fight or flight situation. It's like it's to help you make a better decision in an anxious moment. So what it's doing by watching these murders, for 3 days, you're in fight or flight. I mean, that's it leaves you in an anxious space. And that's just the way they want it. They want you to be anxious. They want you to be fearful because you're easier to control like that. This is all about farming. It's all about farming. In fact, if you look into farming, as far as just farming animals, it will give you a good insight as to why certain things are the way they are here and why they push for certain behaviors in people or to create behaviors that, it benefits them in their people farming situation. But that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that about the Audibles. How calling Audibles can sometimes help what you're trying to do, as well as hand motions and movement. It's all very abracadabra, of course, but I mean, we're supposed to think of it that way because they trained us to think of it as just silly, like cartoonish. That's the things you think of, like, oh, that sounds retarded. The reason it does is because you've been taught that it's retarded. Because they don't want you doing it. They give you science instead. And they continue to use magic. You're using it right now. I'm using it right now. You do all day. These people don't hedge their bets. They got you covered from every angle. So it's kind of all about mitigation. It's good to be aware of, but not obsessively aware of it. Like, that sometimes happens to me where I'm just like, you can get paralyzed by that kind of shit and make you non-functioning. Which is also something they don't mind. They don't care if you stay in bed all day. You're just a battery to them. And I'd say in this case, right, I was going to say it jokingly that knowing's half the battle. Knowing's 100% of the battle. Because if you know, in most cases, shit doesn't work on you anymore. Just even if you haven't constructed a way to maneuver yourself around these things, just knowing. You don't even have to believe it. Just the concept of knowing that there's a possibility. You've already protected yourself almost 100% from it. It's the seeing the thing I use all the time about the assistant handing the magician the rabbit under his cape. So then when he pulls it out of the hat, you don't care because you're like, oh, okay, I've seen that. Even if you believe or don't believe that he still didn't pull out of the hat, just having that concept in your mind is like a little sliver in your brain, and it's always going to be there. And eventually, it grows. Hopefully, it grows into something else, and you can begin to use that and apply it to other things as well. Hot sun, man. It's hot sun. Don't blame the teacher. Blame the school.